nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public announcements? Any public comment on items not on the agenda? Oh, I see an announcement. Up. Okay. Please, ma'am, when you get up there, would you mind saying your name for the record?
You may need to turn your microphone on. Just hit that little button. It should turn it green.
I'm Jody Wills, and I'm from Potomac, and I am here for another reason, but as long as I was here, I was going to put in a plug to have Bradley Seaman be in charge of the elections in Missoula County.
Your wish has been granted.
John Hart just told me my wish was granted.
Yeah.
You did good work appointing
Yeah.
him.
John's good at granting people's wishes. No, not even. All right, our current claims list. Claims received as of January 31st, 2020 to February 19th, 2020 by the Commissioner's Office total $3,700,224, $751.71. All right, we have 4 public hearings today. Our first one is on a City-County Food Policy Advisory Board, and Sarah Bell will describe it.
Thanks. So I'm Sarah Bell, Community Engagement Coordinator for the Commissioner's Office. The resolution before the Commissioners today for the Food Policy Advisory Board is a joint city-county resolution, which would implement one of the recommendations of a 2005 resolution to establish a Missoula Food Policy Advisory Board, which will provide policy recommendations to increase security of Missoula's local food system, promote sustainable agriculture that enhances the local economy, connect food access programs to local nutritious food, and build regional self-reliance and climate resiliency. This joint resolution was approved by the City Committee of the Whole on February 19th. It was then approved by the City Council on February 24th. This Food Policy Board will advise elected officials on policy initiatives. It will coordinate with existing programs with Missoula City, County, as well as other county, state, and regional food policy organizations. It will bring attention to new programs and opportunities related to food and farming. It will serve in an advisory capacity with no authority to take official action on behalf of the City Council, the Mayor, or the County Commissioners. The board will consist of 7 voting members and 2 alternate members, 3 members appointed by the Commissioners, 2 by the City Council, 1 by the Mayor, 1 also appointed by the Community Food and Agricultural Coalition. There will also be 2 alternate members, 1 appointed by the Commissioners and the other by the City Council. Administrative support will be provided by the Community and Planning Services, and once members have been appointed, the first meeting will be held in the spring of 2020. Tomorrow, the application process will begin, and it will be open from February 28th through March 28th.
You guys have any questions? Any public comment on this?
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Berglund. Oh, gosh, I don't know how to just press the button. This button.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Oh, much louder. My name's Erica Berglund. I'm a graduate student at the University of Montana. It's lovely to see you all again. And I just wanted to thank you all for bringing this forward, particularly Commissioner Slotnick, and reiterate that establishing the Missoula Food Policy Advisory Board is an instrumental step in developing a resilient local food system that supports healthy food access for all Missoulians. Also is an important step in achieving many of our city and county goals for our community. And we will be following in the footsteps of 282 communities across the U.S. while leading Montana in advancing food policy on behalf of a sustainable, healthy, and equitable local food system. So thanks again.
Thank you.
And I think folks can probably just keep the microphone on unless we start getting feedback.
My name is Bonnie Buckingham. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition. And I want to thank you for this resolution and for the forming of this Food Policy Council. CFAC was started back in 2005 to really look at policy and how it could help the different programs that we're working somewhat independently of each other, and to really bring things together and look at what policies can help really build a local food and farm system in our valley. And building upon that, I think it's a great time. There's still many relevant issues that we haven't been able to accomplish and solve, and especially thinking about climate change and all of the different priorities that have come out in recent years around that and around planning for growth across our valley. And so I think that it will be great to have entity that is within the government, that all of the other organizations that are working together can really work with that entity and really bring these policies to you and to the city. So thank you so much, and we look forward to what comes.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jody Wills, a livestock producer from the Potomac Valley. I'm here today to voice some concerns pertaining to the proposed Food Policy Advisory Board. First, no matter what food, agricultural policy, or regulation is passed by either the City of Missoula, the Missoula County Commissioners, or the two together, will ever feed Missoula County. There was more infrastructure and less population in the county more than 50 years ago. It is no more, and it could not meet the needs of the area at that time. How can it meet it now? There is not enough productive agricultural land in the county to feed the people of the county. The regulation of land use through policies may be considered a taking of private property rights. There was a proposal before the county a few years ago about setting land apart for agricultural use, land that was being sold. This plan was not approved. However, there were committees set up to study how to move forward with all sides involved. These committees made reports to the county commissioners. What became of those recommendations? Did the efforts of the people who gave time, personal involvement, and knowledge not meet the desired answers? Evidently not, as here we go again. One of my biggest concerns is the makeup of the board. Why does a nonprofit, CFAC, have the opportunity to place someone on the board? Why does not a nonprofit group representing producers have a person or persons on the board? Why not someone representing the stock growers, the cattle women, the Farm Bureau, Farmers Union, Montana Grain Growers? These are all nonprofit organizations of people on the ground, working the ground to produce food to feed others. I am not aware of any other county board who has a nonprofit group picked member. For example, the Missoula Board of Realtors does not have their own appointed person on the planning board. If this proposed advisory board is adopted, it is my heartfelt plea that the membership of the board be as broad-based as agriculture is in Missoula County. This board will be making decisions which very well could affect many segments of agriculture. All facets should have some import. Thank you for listening and considering these concerns.
We have a motion?
Did you have anything? Do you want to?
Hi, is it okay if I?
Oh, there's so, I didn't see
sorry.
it.
Sorry.
My name is Rachel Guin, and I've been sitting on the Food Policy Council Board. I'm a citizen, and to help create this board. And so one thing as a point, I want to recognize your concerns
And a food policy board does have, and in the creation of this, we had a list of wanting to have on there people that do represent livestock growers, a diverse representation of agriculture. So by means of having CFAC be on that board, that really was a way to be able to have somebody that is in touch with a variety of different growers and has been involved in policymaking to be able to bring expertise to that. There is the ability of the commissioners to appoint 3 people, and that does not preclude them from appointing said individuals and nonprofits that you brought to the table, which I think is a really valid point. And in the discussions of creating this board, we were very aware that it is not a narrow system, and it is not just about the local, we know that we cannot produce food in just the county, but that a food system is a lot larger than our county. And so we appreciate everything that you just said, ma'am, and we want you to know that that has been thought about. And there is the ability of the commissioners and city council as well as the mayor to appoint other people. So I just wanted that on the record and that it was thought of. Thank you.
I really appreciate the comments, so thank you all. I move to approve a joint resolution establishing the City and County Food Policy Advisory Board.
I'll second that. Yeah, I enthusiastically support this. It's admittedly absolutely true that we currently do not, and probably into the foreseeable future, and perhaps always will not produce every amount of food necessary in all categories that we need here in the Missoula Valley. But this board is not just about food production. It goes well beyond that to talk about distribution or anything that bears on food and food security in this region of Missoula County, particularly in this age where climate change is real and we are on the cusp of adopting a climate adaptation and resiliency plan for Missoula County. Food and food security and food policy needs to play largely in how we achieve those goals. Will this advisory entity provide us insight into land use regulations? I certainly hope so, because I think that's a piece of the puzzle. But that, again, is not the entirety of what this Food Policy Advisory Board is about. And I want to thank Commissioner Slotnick for his leadership and work on this.
Thanks. All right, we have a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. Next up, Emily Brock.
I'm so glad so many people came to hear about my resolution to create a fair
There's nothing
foundation.
like bylaws to bring people out.
I know. So thanks, everyone. I need a clicker. Or should I just sit here? Is that just only 6 slides, so this will be quick. All right, well, we're here today to finalize a process that's been many years in the making, that is reinstating the Fairgrounds Foundation, which has been dormant for almost a decade. The first goal of the foundation will be to raise funds for a new rodeo arena and livestock center for 4-H. But first, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do. I'll give you a little bit of history. In 1996, the Western Montana Fair Foundation was created as a Montana nonprofit public benefit corporation with the charitable mission of supporting the programs for the Missoula County Fairgrounds and Western Montana Fair. That's a mouthful. Originally, the directors of the Western Montana Fair, which we call the Fair Board, were also the directors of the foundation. In 1999, the County Commission adopted a resolution recognizing their right to appoint the board of directors for the Fair Board, and therefore the Fair Foundation. 2006, the county dissolved the Fair Board and created the Fair Commission in its place. Then, in 2007, the Fair Commission was dissolved, hence leaving no board members for the Fair Foundation. In 2014, the county commissioners recognized that it was desirable to reactivate the foundation, and at that time, the commissioners made themselves the officers of the foundation as a holding place while the foundation was reactivated. Now, in 2020, I'm here before you today with new updated foundation bylaws and articles of incorporation, new board members in place to take up the mantle for what is now called the Missoula Fairgrounds Foundation. The mission of the Fairgrounds Foundation, well, I'll tell you what's before you today. The resolution that's before you today will approve the restated articles of incorporation, approve the name change to the Missoula Fairgrounds Foundation, approve the first restated bylaws, and then appoint the individuals to serve on the board of directors. So the mission of the Fairgrounds Foundation is to support the fairgrounds by identifying potential donors and soliciting donations that support capital expenses for redevelopment of the fairgrounds according to plans adopted by Missoula County. I also thought it was really important to put into the mission that the vision, to promote the vision that fairgrounds redevelopment is a revitalization and stewardship of a physical space that embodies the diversity we find in Missoula County itself, connecting people by bridging our rural heritage and urban vibrancy and blurring the lines between recreation and education. And of course, what you guys hear me talk about a lot, adhering to the mantra that redevelopment efforts should unify people and resources at the fairgrounds under the fundamental belief that a rising tide lifts all boats, incarnate in partner efforts through transparency and a commitment to positive messaging for all projects. So the structure of the foundation is that there's two boards, a governing board and a sustaining board. In addition to fundraising, the governing board has supervision, control, and direction over the affairs of the foundation, while the sustaining board focuses primarily on fundraising. Missoula County, of course, will continue to own and operate the fairgrounds and must approve all plans and policies for redevelopment. Now I'm going to pass it off to Joel Cavilla from Crowley Fleck, who helped us write the bylaws and articles of incorporation. He'll explain the structure of the C3 we decided to move forward with and answer questions pertaining to nonprofit and charitable foundation law.
Thank you. So the main change in the structure is the restated articles of incorporation make this charity what's known as a supporting organization, which gets its own public charity status due to the fact that it is operated in connection with a governmental entity. So its sole purpose here is to raise funds, hold funds for the benefit of the fairgrounds program. And so that is the change in the restated articles. It has specific language that's consistent with the regulations for supporting organizations to maintain the tax exempt status under 501c3. And then the restated bylaws also are conforming with that new structure and the new supporting organization status for the organization. And then the restated articles of incorporation, as Emily had indicated, the commission right now, you are the board members of the existing charitable organization, of the nonprofit corporation. So you will need to sign the restated articles of incorporation acknowledging those changes.
Sounds good. Then we're out.
Yep, then you're out.
Then we're out.
And you're out.
Thank you for
All
putting
right.
that together.
So there's a resolution in front of you today, and the resolution pretty much describes what we just described.
So before we dive in here, I just want to acknowledge all of Emily's great work in taking the fairgrounds from something that was fading away to something that is now shining bright and looks even more promising in the future, involving a whole bunch of disparate partners, multiple fundraising entities. It's quite a complex thing, and will soon be something better than we ever could have thought. So well done.
Plus fair food.
Plus fair food, right? You got fair food too.
And so just to be clear, the initial board of directors will be Robert Burns, Mike Nugent, Eric Gabster, Emily Brock, and Jerry Marks, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Take a motion.
Public comment?
Public comment? Thank you. Sorry. Here comes some comment.
There's very little that I have to add to everything that's been said. My name's Eric Gapser. I'm a resident of Midtown, and should this resolution pass, which I urge you to do so, I will be a member, as you've just noted, of the board of directors of the Missoula Fairground Foundation. It's interesting to note, one thing that was not, didn't have space on the slide, is that it was 10 years ago this April that the Missoula County Fairground Advisory Committee was instituted. I was honored to serve on that committee for 3 years, and we began the great work of getting everything back on track by dealing with about 15 different entities that wanted to be on a very, very small 46 acres. And we began the winnowing process of addressing each one of those, giving everyone their public say and their request to be there. And we began to cobble together a design for those fairgrounds, which was in the next few years vetted over and over and then presented to the county commission, accepted, and then under the stellar leadership of Emily, carried forward and made manifest. This is one of the last little puzzle pieces to be in place, and that's to have a foundation that is made up of members of the public who are going to go out and raise money to support a public institution. That's one of the biggest advantages of it. Plus, it takes another responsibility off of your plate. So I can say, given the history of what's happened over the last 10 years and the great leadership we have under Emily Brock, that the goals of the county are definitely going to be carried forward. Nothing's really being taken away. It's being carried forward with the vision and guidance that have been put behind it. And with some spectacular work that's already begun on the fairgrounds, I see that space is going to be a gem of Midtown, a real regional center, a year-round center, which it is not quite yet. And also, most importantly, bring really the heritage and the tradition of the county in its agriculture and its urban vibrancy all together in one place. So I urge you to help that all along by approving this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, likewise, I would echo that. Thanks so much, Emily, and everyone else who played a hand in bringing to us today what it is that we're going to take action on, which is yet another step in, if folks hadn't noticed, a significant transformation of the Missoula County Fairgrounds, and there are lots of good things yet to come. So I would move that we adopt a resolution restating the Articles of Incorporation and first restated bylaws for the Missoula Fairgrounds Foundation and appointing initial board members.
An enthusiastic second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Emily. Next up, hearing on the Weisenberger family transfer with our very own Matt Heimel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Matt Heimel with Community Planning Services. For your consideration at today's public hearing is a proposed family transfer exemption. This is a request from Cody Weisenberger to use the family transfer exemption in the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act to create and transfer one parcel to his daughter, Bentley Weisenberger. The property is located at 23320 Wahupa Lane in the Huson area, east of 6 Mile Road and southwest of Wahupa Lane, approximately 1.3 miles north of Interstate 90. And here's a slightly closer aerial image. The property is unzoned, and the Missoula County Growth Policy recommends a residential dwelling of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. This is a map showing the property within a half-mile of Zone A floodplain. However, the property is in a 1-mile buffer area, but it is technically at low risk due to topography and elevation. This is the existing lot configuration. Note that north is pointing to the right. The current parcel is approximately 11.78 acres in area. The property was acquired by the claimant through a warranty deed on April 25th, 2014, and the property was originally created as parcel 27 of 55 original parcels of the Elk Meadows Ranchettes in 1974. The proposed transfer would result in 2 total tracts. The 11.78 acre parent tract to remain in ownership by the claimant would be reduced to approximately 5.15 acres in area. The tract to be transferred to his daughter, Bentley, will be a total of 6.63 acres in area. And the parent parcel currently has 1 dwelling unit and multiple accessory structures. Access to the proposed transfer tract will be provided off of Wahupa Lane, and the applicant has stated that the intended use for each parcel will remain as residential. With any request for family transfer exemption, we review rebuttable presumptions and general evasion criteria for the evasion of subdivision review. There were 5 total criteria triggered by this. First of all, I would like to provide some clarification. In the staff analysis, there is a bold statement that one of the criteria triggered is that the claimant owns additional property in Missoula County. Technically, that is not applicable because the claimant owns a mobile home in the county of which a family member occupies. He does not actually own an underlying tract or any additional property. And that's not one of the 5 that I will go over here. So first of which, the intended claimant is the property owner's 7-year-old daughter, and the applicant includes a letter stating that a trust will be created to hold the property. The second criteria I'll touch on is that the tracts will share common roads with the other parcels of Elk Meadow Ranchettes. Wahupa Lane provides access to Wapiti Road, thereby accessing the Frenchtown frontage road via 6 Mile Road. Third, being that the property is within half mile of Zone A designated floodplain, and as I said, however, technically the risk is low due to the topography and elevation. Fourth, the proposal will exceed the recommended density of 1 dwelling per 10 acres in the growth policy. And for the final criteria that we'll touch on, I'm going to switch to a graphic that was prepared by the applicant's agent, Jenna Sage with Missoula Engineering. And this graphic is illustrating prior exemptions, including occasional sales and family transfers that have taken place within 1 mile of the proposed transfer. So the subject property has the blue outline, and you can see a few occasional sales and family transfers that have taken place within 1 mile, all of which resulted in new tracts that are under 10 acres in area. I also have a graphic that I'll switch from this. This has similar information. It also includes some of the minor subdivisions that have taken place in the area. Unlike the last that showed 1 mile, this is illustrating the section that has Elk Meadows Ranchettes. So the areas in green are minor subdivisions that have taken place. There were 6 subdivisions with 7 new lots. Areas that are outlined in red with the blue, those are the occasional sales. There have been 13 occasional sales, resulting in 13 new lots in Elk Meadows, and 5 family transfers, resulting in 5 new lots. And you can see the subject property in yellow on the bottom of the screen with red hash lines indicating the proposed lot boundaries. All of these resulted in new tracts that were under 10 acres in area. So the application was sent out to county agencies for comment. Public Works Department, Clerk and Recorder, Floodplain Administrator, and the Surveyor's Office all provided a response of no comment or concern for this proposal. The Environmental Health Department did comment that the project will require sanitation review or citation of an applicable exemption under Title 76 for MCA. Based on the facts as presented in the exemption affidavit and reviewed by staff, there does not appear to be an attempt to evade subdivision review. I now have some questions for the applicant. And if you could please state your name for the record too.
Hi, I'm Cody G. Weisenberger.
Thank you. I have 6 questions for you. 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No, sir.
Thank you. 2, do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Thank you. Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
I have not.
Thank you. 4, do you have a trust established for the child to hold the property?
I've had intent to trust, yes, to set one up with my attorney.
Thank you. Who is the trustee of the trust, or who controls it?
That would be me.
Thank you. And finally, if the property is sold, will the money be held in trust?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That concludes my questions.
Would your representative like to speak at all? Nope. Okay. Do you guys have any questions?
I might, depending on if there is any other public comment on it.
Maybe I missed this, Matt, but can you explain sewer water for this particular parcel, the new parcel, then I guess explain in the section how sewer and water work here? Is it a public system
My
or
understanding
community
there'll be,
system?
individual septic. Maybe the applicant's representative has some more information as to their specific
Sorry.
plans.
Thanks.
James Sage with Missoula Engineering. That's correct. The septic systems are all individual on-site septic systems. The site plan is created showing approximate locations of where a septic system would be sited. Of course, this will go through Missoula County review as far as sanitation. Water systems, water in the, I forget the name of the ranchettes, is provided through a community water supply. So there's existing water mains within Wahupa Lane that each tract would be connected to.
Go ask questions.
So on one of the first schematics, I noticed what appeared to be listed as a 3-bedroom home. Is that what is being, that's not on the ground there already, is it? Or is that what's being contemplated?
No, there's no existing home on the newly proposed created tract. What that is that's part of sanitation review. You have to propose a location of a home and facilities that would be provided. So that site plan is intended to go and be presented to County Health Department for review and approval of a septic system. That allows the lot in the future to construct a home under today's review criteria that will be required in order to file the COS.
Okay, another question for Mr. Weisenberger, since you're there in the background. Thank you for joining us today. So you have a 7-year-old daughter. Why not wait 11 years and come before us when she's an adult and you wouldn't need to propose a trust or anything else, and it would be way straightforward?
Right. Well, due to the cost of things going up, my neighbor, he's lived up there since the subdivision has been a subdivision, and he said back in the day that they used to be able to subdivide for $500, and I have the extra money right now to be able to do what I want to do and to get this done, and I figure if I don't do it now, then I'd never do it, and it might be unreachable by then if I wait.
So is what you're planning on doing is more than just the family transfer? You're looking at actually building something? Because
maybe someday, yes. Well, what the deal is, I know she's 7 years old, but my wife and I, we both work. You know, we have good jobs. It's hard to save for college. College is a lot of money for these young kids anymore. And for kids to have a home and have land someday in the future, things are getting so expensive that it might be unreachable for them. So in this sense, for saving college, this is kind of my way of saving for my daughter. You know, something that will build value over time and something she can do with something in the future to give her a good head start in life. And I wish my folks would do something like that for me when I was, you know, a kid. And I'm sure everybody does wish that their folks did something like that just to get them started, you know, in life.
Thank you.
Something that I really want to do, and I'm going for it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then, if I understand you right, what your hope would be to do the family transfer, build a house, sell that parcel with the house, and then use that money to cover college costs and things like that?
No, just to get it set up, maybe build a house someday. My wife, she wants the kids to stay home forever, so maybe this might help.
As a parent, I appreciate that, but I don't see how that helps with the saving part of it. You made a
Well,
compelling
if-
argument on the first
If she
half.
wants to build a house there someday, I'd build a house there for her. If she wants to, sell it down the road for college, or, it'll be worth value. Who knows if there'll be any land left when she's at that age?
I mean, that all sounds really good. It just, why not wait till she was 18? Like, you'll still own the property. You have more equity in it then. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do a family transfer. It's hard to see this right now not as a cheaper way to subdivide into two pieces, rather than to give a chunk of land to a family member for them to live on, which is what I believe is kind of the spirit of the family transfer.
Right. I just don't feel in the future that I'd be able to afford it or do the family transfer if it would be even around in that period of time. So I have the time and the money to do it now, so I'm going to get it done now. It's been talk with my family and everybody, and something that I want to do.
John, the family transfer is part of state law, right?
That's right.
So it's not going anywhere.
It's an exemption that the legislature provided so that somebody doesn't have to go through full subdivision review if they otherwise meet the criteria for the exemption.
I'm just not sure if this is the right, I absolutely appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yes.
And I'm just not sure this is the right tool for it. And I defer to Attorney Hart here, and I know this isn't a family planning hearing, but is there another tool that would be more appropriate for what he's trying to do?
If there is,
Put you on
I'm
the
not
spot,
aware of
sorry.
it. And I mean, you didn't ask me this, Commissioner, but as is outlined in the staff report and staff recommendation, and my review of the Subdivision and Plating Act, my understanding of the exemption statute, and then our regulations, everything that's being proposed today meets the letter of the law and the regulations here. But I can't say that there's another tool that's available to the applicant here to achieve the things that he's trying to achieve for his daughter.
Well, I think the tool is minor subdivision, which is going to cost more. But in looking at this, I have serious reservations. I mean, this does not substantially comply with the growth policy. I don't think the occasional sales that have occurred in this particular area are a good guide, because occasional sales has been a tool that's been taken away because it was so misused over time, and was certainly a way in certain cases to avoid subdivision review. I've seen too many cases where, and I think the spirit of family transfers is that you are truly providing a family member with a piece of property that family member will probably reside on. I've seen too many cases where minor children have been the recipients of a family transfer, and that property has been, I think you can look right down there by 6 Mile, where there's a bunch of duplexes there that I highly doubt that any of those minor children are going to be living in those anytime soon, and might very well be sold off. Even if it does go into a trust, I think that is not with the spirit of the law in mind.
I know which place you're talking about, and I'm not going to prosper off of this like that gentleman is obviously doing.
I would have an easier time with this if your daughter was old enough to fully own a piece of land and live in a house. And I totally feel for you as a parent and want to brainstorm around this. I mean, could you possibly build the second house there now, lease it out when she's 18, do the family transfer, and then give it to her, in which case it would make total sense. It wouldn't look like you're attempting to not go through minor subdivision because it's very costly, which I totally understand that. It is costly.
I'd rather have this as a savings account for her rather than money that you can't see. At least it's physical, it's there.
Yeah, I mean, your lands, if you keep owning it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to increase in value over time.
Right, and it might increase to get it done too. That's why I'm saying I have a little bit of time and money to be able to accomplish this now, and it's something that I want to do, and I'll still want to do it. So I'm going forward with it.
Yeah, maybe I'm kind of leaning with Dave here that the tool would be minor subdivision, given your daughter's age.
Right.
What, Matt, when was the growth policy, the latest growth policy?
The latest update to the applicable plan in this area was 2016.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a motion? Any more questions? More questions are fine.
Go ahead, sorry.
I don't have any.
And I would just say, regardless of how the vote turns out, I totally get it. I have small kids myself, and any decision we make here is in the context of other projects that we've seen play out on the landscape of Missoula County.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we deny the resolution. I'm sorry. Do I have the right? I don't have the right language in front of me. I'm sorry. That we deny the application to utilize the family transfer exemption.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Our next one is a resolution calling for an election for referral to the people of Missoula County for authorization of a local option motor fuel excise tax. And Vicky's going to, okay. I will introduce this. So I've been on the job here for a little more than a year. And shortly after I started, I think my very first conversation with Shane Stack, our Public Works Director, who's traveling right now, Shane came into my office and just wanted to very straightforwardly, with no doubt left in his voice, he wanted to make sure I knew that our roads were not in good shape and that the only way to get them back into good shape was to spend real money. He also let me know that any money we didn't spend repairing our roads now would magnify in the future. Not fixing these roads now would cost more later. I was quite new on the job. One thing I did know, last winter was a bit harder a winter than we've had this year, was that the number one piece of type of subject matter contact that we get from our citizens is on the quality of our roads. So I knew two things then 1 month into the job. People really care about the roads and that we were way behind in fixing them. Shane also let me know that the legislature made it available to us to bring to the voters, not for us to decide, but to bring to the voters the option of adding 2 cents to the gallon of gas. That's not a diesel, just gas. And kind of just let that sink into my head. And then he went off and began doing his job. A few months after that, I had some contact with some folks in the private sector who had similar concerns to Shane that our roads were not in good shape. These folks also brought this idea around, could we have a 2-cent gas tax? The legislature allows it. Our only other option is to raise property taxes, something that has been made loud and clear to me is not a good thing. Nobody wants this. So I worked with these folks in the private sector for a handful of months trying to bring this idea to fruition. I'm just telling you this story as to where did this come from. That's where this came from. A conversation that's about a year old, at least half a year old, working with folks in the private sector. So just to reiterate what this would be, what this is, we have a public hearing today, one in a week, and then in a week after that, we'll vote. And what the three of us vote on is not whether or not we should have a gas tax, but whether or not the voters of Missoula County should decide if we have a gas tax. So just, if you wouldn't mind, keep that in mind. Our vote is to put this on the ballot. So with that, what I'd like to do is have one of the community members who really played a key role in bringing this idea into something solid and formable, Chris Anderson, and we have Jim Bouchon from MOR, have these guys kind of introduce this. Then we have some comments from staff as to the nature of our roads. And then I'd like to open this up to public comment. And I'd like to do this because we have a lot of people here. Let's do all the proponents, and then we'll do all the opponents, just so we keep things clear. And I know people are passionate about this. We're going to keep comments to 3 minutes after these first two presentations, and I will use a stopwatch and then tell you to stop. Does that sound all right? Okay. Chris.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Slotnick. Yes, my name is Chris Anderson. I'm president of DJ&A Engineering here in Missoula. We employ about 80 people in our company, and we primarily focus on providing transportation solutions to communities, counties, just like Missoula. And I echo Shane's sentiment that our infrastructure, particularly our transportation infrastructure, is in poor shape. And I think my biggest concern is that we don't have enough tools in our tool belt today to keep up with the rising demand of taking care of that infrastructure. I think that investments now, to Shane's point that I think he makes, is investments now will pay big dividends later if we can address those needs sooner rather than later. A few reasons why I support this, not only as a member of the county, but also in my engineering capacity. The first is that I see this as a tremendous opportunity to leverage federal dollars and bring money to our county that otherwise would be unavailable. So a great example of that is the $13 million bill grant that was brought to Missoula County. Missoula County applied for that, they won it, and there's a lot of other funding available like that that's only available if you have a local match. And so I see this as a great opportunity to use local dollars, raised locally, to bring more federal dollars just like that to Missoula County. The other thing I really like about this is that it's administered at the local level. We don't have the state or federal government with their fingers in the pie. It is administered by the local constituents, the city council, county commissioners. They will be the ones making the decisions as to how this money is to be used. Another reason why I can support this, I feel like the state law that allows us to actually consider this as a ballot measure has adequate sideboards on it. A couple sideboards that is included in state law. One, it caps it at 2 cents. I think that pencils out to be about $10 per year for the average driver. That's a doable amount, and that small amount for that individual will translate into potentially big dividends for the county in keeping up with those transportation infrastructure needs. Also, it puts sideboards on it so that the money can only be used for transportation-related infrastructure. So we can't use this gas tax to improve our water systems or sewer systems. This is about transportation infrastructure. So another thing that you brought up, Commissioner Slotnick, is that this is only gasoline. So a strong argument can be made that if we pass this tax, that tax is going to be distributed to all the goods and services that we use here in the county. And because it's only on gasoline, you know, when we go buy groceries at the grocery store, trucks fueled by gasoline are not typically the ones that are bringing those goods and services to that retail center. So by focusing on gasoline instead of diesel, I feel like we can really focus the tax on the user rather than the overall distribution of goods and services. Also, I think it's important that in state law, 1% of the proceeds go back to the distributors. There's a significant burden that will be felt by the distributors, and it's important that we offset that. So I don't think 1% is probably enough to offset maybe some of those costs. There's probably some more that we can do, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I like that state law requires that 1% of those proceeds, or a portion of those proceeds are brought back, given to the distributors. Above all, this is a very fair tax. So gasoline tax is one of the fairest taxes that I know of. Those that use the roads pay for the maintenance of those roads, and they pay for it as they put gas in their vehicle. So a huge part of this is that when people come to visit from outside the county, tourists or others that are not members of this county, they help pay for that tax as well. They're using the roads, and they're not paying property taxes. They're not paying their fair share to use the infrastructure that is in place for them. So although I would caution against calling this a tourist tax. I don't see this as a tourist tax, but I definitely think it provides an opportunity for us to leverage dollars from outside the county to help with the local needs that we have here. A few points of concern. I think it's important that we not only list reasons why we're in favor of something, but I think there's a few concerns that I would just bring to your attention as well. The biggest concern is that this is only a partial solution to the problem. I think we need to recognize that. Opponents to this, I'm positive, will say that we just need to do better with the money that we already have. That is true. We do need to do better with the money that we already have. The revenue stream that's coming in, we need to be more efficient with that use. There's nobody that's going to disagree with me that we probably can't find better efficiencies in using that money. But that's only part of the problem, just like this gas tax is only part of the solution, right? So we have to look at other ways, not just becoming better stewards of the money and the revenue streams that we have, but actually finding new revenue streams. That's a big part of this. And so this presents an opportunity for us to do that locally here in Missoula. And again, back to the burden on the distributors, there is a cost that will be associated with this. And I think in discussions that we have ideas, and we'd love to engage the distributor community and find ways that this will not be a burden. This should not be a cost to those who have to administer this at the distributor level. So I'm in favor of this, provided that we address these concerns and, again, see it as a great tool that we can use locally to really take care of our infrastructure, keep it in good shape so that we can see the continued economic development that we've seen here in Missoula. So thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jim Bashan from Missoula Organization of Realtors. I represent over 750 realtors in the greater Missoula area. And we've had, I think we will echo very much of what Chris just spoke to. We've had two concerns, and it should be no surprise. Realtors are concerned about the tax burden that happens with property owners, but we're also very concerned about the condition of roads. Our concern with these two issues, our members value good roads in our community. We value jobs and property ownership. Those are priorities for realtors in our community. When we discuss this problem with other members of the community, business leaders, we took a step and commissioned a survey. And there was a few key findings I think are important to call out, and you have those before you in the attached letter. As Chris stated, one of the things that came out in the survey is that our local citizens are very concerned about the road conditions. 69% of the respondents or voters said they see great or some need for an increase in funding of road maintenance in Missoula County. 69%. Bottom line in the survey results, 62% support a 2-cent per gallon gasoline-only tax for road maintenance in Missoula City, Missoula County. 62% support. What we found was enormous consistency, I think, in the work that the county has done, Shane has done. There's just reiteration, and the survey just reinforces that. So again, you have the memo before you. We, as the Missoula Organization of Realtors, support this.
Thanks. So we have some staff speak to this, or Jeremy? Where'd Jeremy go? Oh,
Right here.
there he is. Thank you. Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jeremy Keene, I'm the City Public Works Director. Eric Dixon and I are going to tag team this.
Thanks, guys.
We just want to give a little bit of context of the issues we're dealing with. So we've been collaborating, city and county have been collaborating over the past year on assessing what our needs are. We've engaged in a pavement condition survey, and this is where they go out and they drive every single one of our roads and they record it with lasers and LiDAR and all kinds of fancy stuff that lets them determine exactly what's going on with the pavement. And we're starting to get some of the preliminary results. And the picture you're looking at here is the crack intelligence survey. And so this is basically just looking at how many of the roads have cracking. And this is a good indication of when pavement is starting to fail. And what you're looking at here is just a snapshot of kind of the core of the city. And everything that's red is showing many cracks. And then as you get into green, it's fewer cracks. And so just sort of as an order of magnitude problem, you can see that most of our streets are in that category of red, that we have mostly streets that are at their life and are in need of maintenance.
So, I don't want to spend too much time on these slides. I don't think anyone disagrees that our roads are in rough shape. That's why everyone's here. The polling that was recently completed clearly shows that there is an understanding and agreement with that. And we'll probably get into more of the financial discussion here in the next few slides. But we just wanted to use this as an example of where we've been and what we can go to. With the creation of the Barca gas tax a few years ago, that's how this project was funded. That section of road was a mile long, and it sat out there for 8 years or more, and we knew that it needed scheduled maintenance, but every year, Jeremy, if you can go to the next slide, we would have issues like this that pop up. We have our scheduled maintenance on old asphalt, and everyone knows that in Missoula we have a lot of clay underneath our roads, and when something goes wrong, those emergency things that happen in the spring become our priority. So our scheduled maintenance always takes a back seat to the emergency response maintenance.
And within the city, we're seeing similar problems. We have a lot of streets in the city that were never developed to a full urban street standard with curb and gutter and proper drainage, and so you're seeing those pavements starting to crack and fail and develop potholes. We also have a lot of streets that are in that category of they need maintenance now or they're going to get more expensive to maintain in the future. And streets like Mount Avenue and 3rd are good examples where we're starting to see the cracking. They're still in pretty good shape, but if we don't get to them soon, it'll be worse. So our current funding, both the city and county have about $6.5 million annually in road maintenance funding. City maintains about 339 miles of road. County maintains a little bit more. And so that works out to roughly $19,000 a mile for the city and $14,000 a mile for the county. We did some calculations on what we should be spending to keep up with this, and this is just based on if we did regular maintenance and rehabilitation over a 30-year life of a road, what would we be doing and how much would it cost? And so in the city, we think we're spending about half what we need to. So we have about a $6.5 million funding gap. And in the county, it's about 2/3. If we were to have to reconstruct all of those roads, if we let them go to the point where there is no more maintenance, it's completely rebuilding them, the number gets much worse. So order of magnitude, $50 million a year, $53 million a year in the city and $40 million in the county to fully rehabilitate roads. So it it is much more cost-effective for us to maintain roads before they require major reconstruction. This is our most recent transportation survey. The preliminary results, again, reflect the public's interest in seeing road maintenance and repair. This has consistently been the highest priority for investment. And we've done these surveys going back to about 2011, and this is a pretty typical result. So what would the local option gas tax do? We think that a 2 cent a gallon gas tax would generate about 1.1 million annually. Split evenly between the city and county, it's about an 8% bump in our budgets. So it's not going to fix everything, but it's a healthy addition. And so what that means for us is we'd be able to tackle 1 to 2 additional rehabilitation projects every year. As Chris mentioned, it gives us the option to leverage that money against other federal grants. Or it gives us the ability to provide improved level of service: snow plowing, street sweeping, leaf collection, pothole repair. So we talked a little bit about the Barca gas tax. So didn't we just get a gas tax? And in 2017, the state legislature did enact House Bill 473. It's a graduated fuel tax, 6 cents on gas and 2 cents on diesel, that graduates in by 2023. So right now we're at about 4.5 cents on gas. I'm not sure where we're at on diesel, but so that is coming on, and we're seeing that Barca funding, and like Eric showed, we've been able to do some good projects with it, and it's certainly been helpful. It is administered statewide, so that money that we collect here in Missoula, it gets distributed all over the state. So it's that formula is mostly based on road miles, and that's a way of leveling out the counties that don't have the population but have a lot of road miles, and so that gets spread out throughout the state. We don't necessarily get to control that locally. The really important thing I think here is that the final bill was half the recommended amount that the Montana Infrastructure Coalition asked for. They said we need 12 cents a gallon minimum to keep up with our maintenance. And so in the end, that number got cut in half. So we didn't get the full amount, and that's why it's important to think about doing this at the local level. So what's the impact to the public? Chris mentioned about $10. We did the math. If, for somebody who drives about 13,500 miles a year, gets 25 miles to the gallon, it's going to cost about $11. As a comparison, if we wanted to raise that same amount of money through property taxes, it would be between $14 and $21 a year to the median home value of $300,000. So this is a way of, it's less cost, it spreads it out over more people, and we capture some of those out-of-town visitors that are using our roads. And just as a comparison, some other costs that typically families typically spend about $2,000 a year on your cell phone, about $1,200 a year on your power. We already pay $270 a year on our gas taxes, state and federal level. Bought a cup of coffee at Starbucks every day, you'd spend $1,600. So it's a relatively small amount in the grand scheme of things, and we think we could put it to good use.
Thanks. But I wanted to add, one other point of clarity, just because this is compelling to me, and then we'll dive in with public comment. We've had a handful of people mention our tourists, and this piece is really important to me. We get 1.5 million tourists a year. Just wrap your mind around that. 1.5 million guests a year, and there are 112,000 of us that live in the county. I tried to figure this out a little back of the napkin. If we all spend about 360 days a year here, that's what it takes to be a resident. A tourist, on average, according to the university, spends 4 days. And it works out that a tourist is 1.1% of a resident. Well, if you do the math, we end up with 175,000 additional residents. No wonder our roads are in bad shape. We have 112,000 people trying to do road maintenance for 275,000. So the fairness piece of this is really compelling to me in that those who use the roads will actually pay for them. As was said, but I just want to reiterate it, $400,000 of revenue generated by tourists who drive the heck out of our roads and then typically leave. And it's not a bad thing. What they're doing is good, but it reminds me of this sort of adage my dad beat into my head a long time ago about if you borrow a tool, you return it in the same shape or better than what you got it in. Our tourists are borrowing our roads and returning them in crummier shape. And it's not their fault. They don't have an option on how to fix those things. This is that kind of option. I'll get off my soapbox now. So we'll do proponents and then opponents. Please come on up.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak. For the record, I'm Jordan Hess from the Missoula City Council, and I'm here today on behalf of the City of Missoula to ask you to place this local option gas tax on the June primary ballot. This is with great precedent at the city. The city passed in July of 1994 Resolution 5609, asking the Missoula County Board of County Commissioners at that time to do the exact same thing. In June of 2012, the City Council passed Resolution 7704, asking for the same thing. It's been consistent city policy for a while to seek a local option gas tax, and I also have today a letter from Mayor John Engen that I'll present into the record, requesting that you place this on the ballot. Next week, the City Council will take up another resolution to the same effect, and we'll forward that on upon passage. As you know, we have been, as a society, we have been woefully underinvesting in our transportation network for decades. We have had decades of declining federal investment in our infrastructure, and we really need to invest in our transportation infrastructure and networks before they deteriorate to the point where we are rebuilding streets instead of rehabilitating them. This local option gas tax allows us to make these significant investments in our transportation system. And as you know, as local government officials, we are very limited by the state of Montana in the revenue sources that we can seek when it comes to making public infrastructure improvements. We're pretty much limited to property taxes, and you know as well as I do that property taxes are rising and creating more and more of a burden for residents in the city and the county alike. The local option gas tax gives us an opportunity to diversify our revenue sources and to bring in important new funds to address a problem that isn't going away. It allows, as has been mentioned, it allows for tourists and non-residents to contribute their fair share. And I think perhaps most importantly, it gives us some matching funds. Thanks in large part to your leadership, Missoula County received a $13 million build grant last fall, and we just can't receive and expend grants like that without adequate local match. So the local option gas tax gives us one more source of revenue to match federal grants, and it makes us more competitive in those grant applications. As a city and a county and through our transportation, our joint transportation planning entity, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we have great planning documents. We have incredibly visionary transportation plans. We need the tools to implement those plans. As seen through the poll that MOR presented, as well as the city's citizen satisfaction survey, as well as the Metropolitan Planning Organization's transportation survey that was just conducted as a function of the long-range transportation plan update, our citizens value our roads, and they are willing to invest to maintain our roads and to improve the condition of them. So I thank you for your leadership in bringing this forward. It's an incredibly important item that you're considering, and it's great that it's great that you're considering giving our citizens the opportunity to go to the ballot and make this decision. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jordan. Anyone else want to speak for? And then we'll go to against. All right.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Toffer Lenhaer. I am a county employee, but I'm speaking here as a private citizen. And I would like you all to consider putting this on the ballot in June because I think, as many of the speakers have attested to, this is a great investment for maintenance purposes, but I also think about my 5-year-old son, who I want to come back to Missoula and to be proud of growing up here. And I think this type of investment not only maintains our roads, but allows us, as Jordan mentioned, to do some improvements that our citizens value. And I think having this option and giving the voters the opportunity to make this choice is a good opportunity. So thank you.
Hi. My name is Robin Spaziani, and I support putting the question of a county option gas tax on the ballot. And that's the question before us today. As you said earlier, Commissioner Slotnick, not whether or not we should actually implement the tax. And adding a 2-cent local gas tax can only be decided by the voters, and I would hope that even the people who oppose the tax would support putting it on the ballot, because otherwise the people would be deprived of their right to decide this issue. In addition, I hope that both the city and the county will make an extra effort to educate the public about this tax and how the funds will be spent. I've spent the last 2 days on social media refuting misconceptions and misinformation about how Missoula's roads are funded and who should be entitled to use them. People need to understand that vehicle owners do not pay the full cost or even most of the cost of maintaining and building roads, and that funding complete streets that allows for multi-use, including pedestrians and cyclists, does not mean that these users aren't paying their fair share. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is C.B. Pearson. I live here in Missoula in the county, and I want to encourage you to put this on the ballot in June. I did sign the letter that went to the commission, to all three of you, and I want to just give you a little bit of my history. I've been working on transportation issues for 15 years. And I first started working with a group called Transportation for America. And their vision was really one of addressing transportation policy at the federal, state, and local level. And the thing that I learned from them was that transportation policy really shapes our communities. If we do it poorly, then it is unequitable. If we do it poorly, there's a public health concern. If we do it poorly, we burden our economy. We know that Missoula is in a period of prosperity, but it has not always been that way. And that prosperity has come about because our leaders have made smart investments and smart decisions. I've had a visit last night, a little story with a friend from Bozeman who happens to be here for the year, and they went, "Holy crap, I had no idea Missoula was this cool." And it was because of some of our thoughtfulness that our leaders have done. And it's been around thinking about growth, really thinking about that, and rather than just reacting to it. A couple other things I just want to mention. I have been involved in Bozeman a little bit with Transportation Advocates and in Helena, and I have been involved with Mountain Line over the last 10 years. And, you know, that's a great example of the community investing, and we have over 1 million riders a year now, growing every day. And smart decision-making has made Missoula one of the highest generator of jobs. And I think it's very important that we continue smart investment. And one of the advantages of that leadership is we have invested what I would consider in the proper way, and then that investment has returned huge benefits to our community. There's a level of vibrance here, there's a level of job growth, there's a level of interest. And I just want to add one little thing about costs to roads. Every year, right after the county comes up and grades my road, I spend $500 putting dust abatement on it. And my neighbors all appreciate that. But I do it not because I'm neighborly, I do it because it's my self-interest. I don't like dust. My wife doesn't like dust. We react negatively to it. And so I see that as an investment in health, and I'm just fortunate enough, or unfortunate, my neighbors live by close, so they get the benefit of my work, of my money. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dave Wall. I'm the Missoula County Auditor. Although I work at Missoula County, I had nothing to do with putting all this together. I wasn't involved in this, which is fine. I already go to too many meetings, so I appreciate not being a part of this. But I will put my 2 cents in. I'm also on the budget team, so for the county government. So I always have an eye on the budget and what's been going on and our sources of revenue. As been already mentioned, we're very limited in our sources of revenue. Right now, we can use property tax, which in my opinion, and I don't mind saying this, even though I'm a county employee, it's a bad tax. It's a tough tax. It's really, really hard. But that's the only one we can use because of rules made at the state level. I think the fairest tax is an income tax, and that is collected by the state. But the state, of course, has cut funding over the last couple of years, so counties and municipalities are getting less state money. So I think this tax is it's based on a transaction. So there's a concept called social balance. So if you this makes a lot of sense. For every amount of money spent privately, there needs to be a little bit of money spent publicly as well. And if that gets out of balance, what we have is really nice homes, really nice stores, really nice restaurants, and we get there on very, very bad roads, for example. With this, because it's based on a transaction of purchasing fuel, the more fuel that's purchased, the more revenue that's raised for public spending, which means that as the county continues to grow, as there are more users, that revenue will match that automatically. It just makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot more sense than property tax. So I think getting this on the ballot and letting our citizens decide whether this is a good idea is a very good idea. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I guess we're up ready for opponents.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Dirk Cooper. I'm the president of High Noon Petroleum here in Missoula, and I'm also the sitting president of the Montana Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Associations. One of our missions as Montana Petroleum Marketers and C-Store Associations is to stand up for the little guy in Montana. We would not refute taxes. We totally understand the infrastructure issues all across Montana. It's the 4th largest state in the union. We've been trying to push federally to get the gas tax up so we have more money the way it used to be funded properly, but no one wants to touch that time bomb in Washington, D.C. So one point I want to make about being an opponent to putting it on the ballot is that county lines. You have a small station operator that's right inside the county line. Right next door, there's somebody who's out of the county. It's going to be an automatic 2-cent price disparity in the price across the board, which happens in the gas business all the time. You guys all drive around Missoula, you see gas prices, people will drive 10 miles to save a penny on gas. What will happen then is that creates a very anti-competitive environment for anybody who is close to the county line and an advantage to their competitor that might be right across the county line, which then, don't fool yourself, people driving up from the Bitterroot will stop and fuel up before they get into Missoula County. So I think the volume of fuel that will be sold across Missoula will probably decline based on that. Not to mention, we have done studies in the past as petroleum marketers, and it will put certain small store operators out of business. Again, we advocate for the little guy. We're not big oil. We supported the 10-cent full tax when it was at the state in the last session, and we don't even know why it got knocked down because we as a petroleum association, which you would assume were anti-tax, not the case at all. We wanted 10 cents because we know all the state and local municipalities struggle with the infrastructure costs, with road costs. We would not refute any of the comments made earlier by all the road issues and way to pay for it and the property tax burden that people bear. So that's my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Earl Allen. I've been a resident out in the county almost all of my life. I come before you today as a private citizen and as one of your direct constituents from Tura. I say direct because I don't get to vote for city councilors, and with the way my legislative district is drawn, my voice and my vote for legislature and other issues are often diluted or drowned out by the population of the folks in the city proper. And that's my concern here. By putting this on the countywide ballot this soon, especially considering the way absentee voting is done and mail-in voting is done, my concern is that you'll allow the population of the city to overwhelm the folks outside the city limits to pass a regressive tax which will have a greater effect on the folks out where I live, folks who commute into town every day for work, folks like my friends' parents who are now retired and live on fixed income, folks who don't make a lot or have a lot, folks who can't easily pay the city's infamously high rents and allegedly misspent tax revenues, and we don't have the greater options of public transportation out east of town that are available here. Commissioner Slotnick, and I've seen it quoted here otherwise, say it's about a $10.50 increase to the average person. Honestly, sir, I question the math. While it might be a great estimate, I say that folks like me in Tura, or better still, my friends and neighbors out in Clinton, will pay far more simply off the mileage we drive on our daily commutes or trips to town on the weekends to go to the store. Further, Commissioner, you were quoted as saying the tourist would pick up a third of the tab. So the way I see it, most of the bill goes to us locals, and the greater effect on the pocketbook goes to people out where I live. I have other questions too, especially that I don't think have been properly answered before you're ready to throw it on the ballot. We say this will help reclaim the cost of tourism, or at least a third of it. Yet I wonder, which county roads or city streets are being torn up specifically by the tourists? Aren't the marked federal, state, and secondary routes most likely to be used by these travelers already funded by state and federal gas taxes? Aren't they maintained by state and federal funds? Doesn't the state already allocate state gas taxes, which just went up, by the way, as we noted? Don't they do it by population and road miles? Would the funds be spent on bike lanes or bridges to nowhere, these hot buttons in the city? I have that concern as a county resident. Have you looked at how much would be gained or lost when the thousands of commuters who drive up from Ravalli County change their shopping patterns and reduce their volume? Those folks have a choice before they get to the county line. Folks like me are a captive audience east of town. Frankly, Commissioners, I don't think you'll get the result you seek. And in fact, I'll bet the commission a large pizza and some beers at Poor Henry's. Go out and visit sometime. Your constituents, I'm sure, would love to talk to you out there. I'd bet you a large pizza and some beers out there in Clinton that you'll be back sooner than later to ask for another increase of some kind. You even mentioned that, and it's been mentioned here already, so I feel pretty good. I like a large pepperoni and sausage. I ask that you not do this way, and not simply do the bidding of some of the folks in the city, and instead pay attention to the folks like me who live outside the city limits. Your constituents out east of town, in any form, are taxed enough already.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Tabish. I'm owner of Great Western Petroleum. And I would like to echo what Dirk Cooper had said about these bordering towns. What ends up happening is when we vote, if it goes to vote or if it doesn't, are the unintended consequences. It was stated that there'll be a raise in revenue of about $1.5 million. Take Lolo for an example. There are 3 convenience stores, and it's a busy corridor to the Bitterroot. And those 3 locations alone will pay about $100,000 of that $1.5 million in taxes. But what ends up happening with major competitors up the Bitterroot that have a 2-cent lower cost of doing business, there becomes a margin compression with all of these stores in Lolo, and they can't get it back. So basically, it's not paid by the consumer, it's paid by the store owner, which thus makes it uncompetitive for us to do business. In addition, over the last several years, our property taxes in that corridor, and in a lot of other areas have doubled. So it just becomes a tax and a burden to the business owner, which is an unintended consequence. And that's why I would say there are other ways of raising taxes, just like the gas tax and the diesel tax on a statewide basis to where everybody pays it, but we're all on a competitive level playing field. So those are my concerns. Thank you. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Dan Beard, District Manager, Town Pump. I'm not owner operator or anything like that, just manage a couple of different stores. I'd like to just kind of go over just a couple facts that concern me about the future of this. A lot of this information, and thank you for sharing a lot of that cost information. A lot of this is available online for everyone's education. One line in particular, MDT website, it tells you where this money comes from, estimated cost of projects, and actual dollars spent. There's a general, very vague line, says citywide maintenance projects. $530,000 estimate, $1.01 million spent. My prediction is we're back here in a couple of years if this gets going, adding more cents, and it's probably just going to be another twice the budget issue. Again, this is all available, MDT. Thanks.
Just got to offer a point of clarification. The statute says this tax can only be 2 cents a gallon and doesn't offer us any option to raise it unless the legislature was to do that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Monahan, I'm with Noon's Food Stores. One of the concerns that I have is, and I realize Dan said that some of the stuff's found online, I think we're using some fuzzy math here. One, I don't see where the administrative costs have been accounted for anywhere in any of the documents that I've seen, and maybe I've just missed that. But one of the stipulations was that a customer can apply for a rebate for any gasoline that is not used on county roads. So every gallon of gas I put in my boat, I'm going to come to the county, I'm going to want you to refund my money back. And what's that going to cost you for every person that wants a refund on those dollars? I realize it's small cents, but the amount of time and administrative expenses that you're going to incur by adding this tax on a local basis, I think is going to be, it's going to dilute a lot of the money you feel you're going to receive. Secondly, I would like to see how many gallons of gasoline are purchased inside the city limits versus gallons of gasoline purchased outside the city limits. And is that a 50-50 ratio? And if it's not, why are we distributing the funds in a 50-50 ratio? Shouldn't more of those funds go to the county than to the city if those gallons are purchased outside? So those are just a couple points I want to bring up.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brad Longcake. I'm the Executive Director for the Montana Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association. We have roughly 125 members, and we employ roughly 15,000 Montanans. I'm here today to stand in opposition to this, not from the fact that we're opposed to fixing and improving the roads, but from the fact that we empathize with the city on the way of their funding sources. And what I handed out to you today is actually one of the members had mentioned some information related to MDT. And what you can see on that list is that out of the overall dollars that are appropriated for 2020, it's roughly $11.8 million. Missoula is slated to be the second most amount of all the groups, which is over 10%. You're looking at roughly $1.3 million. This dollar amount is based on the work that we did during the 2017 legislative session with House Bill 473. And what that was a combination of a coalition of members across the state looking at how we could solve this exact problem. Obviously, we tried to get a larger amount in terms of the gas tax, because we felt when you have a level playing field, it's across the board. We want to help support the communities. The problem with this, though, is the numbers that you're looking at there is based on the current rate increase, which is 5 cents. So somebody had mentioned some of the math challenges. I'm not exactly sure where you guys got your information. I'm happy to work with what I have from MDT, but this shows right now for 2020, the allotment is 1.27 million. So I'm happy to work with you guys to try to figure out where that discrepancy is, to try to make sure that we're looking at the same numbers. You know, the challenge that we have when we look at it from a local community standpoint, which a number of members have talked about, is the fact that the state or county or communities are now picking winners and losers in terms of the same business entities. You're basically pitting different members against each other. It creates a significant anti-competitive process. And if you think about how we market our fuel and different products, we're the only companies or entities that I know of that have 4-foot signs that display how much we charge. Somebody mentioned people drive 10 miles to save a penny. You might not do that, but there are people that do. And the problem is with the downstream consequences of that is it's not that you lose the gallon of gas, it's you lose the Coke, the candy bar, the bag of chips, the other items that are in those locations. Our owners take pride in what they do, the differences that they have, and that's why they're fierce competitors. They try to improve the overall integrity of the business, but at the end of the day, they're still very fierce competitors. And by having these small differences, you're creating this competition. And somebody else had mentioned the fact that it's not the user that pays for it. If it's your store and I'm right next door and I'm 2 cents lower, if you want to compete, you have to either lower your price or you have to absorb that into your margin. And that's the challenge. If you're a single store owner operator that's been there for years, you might not have the capability or the capital to do that. And that's the challenges. Somebody else had mentioned that there's a number of tourists that will come through. I agree that we do capture gallons when that happens. The question I have for the math is, I don't remember the number that you gave, 175,000. Most people that I know have a family of 3 or 4. So I would argue that we could decrease that by 3 to 4 because most people have a single family driving in a car. So if those things happen, the numbers decrease, the actual gallons sold decrease, and it changes the numbers. The other part of that I want to make people aware of too is, you know, we're transient communities. We move around. We have a lot of different locations that we go to. And I would argue that the majority of the bulk of this would be paid by the local citizens, whether you're a college student, somebody commuting for work. My family, my kids are in wrestling. We travel all over the place. You know, you're moving in and out and you're using a lot of gallons depending on the year. The tourists come certain times of the year. They get their 1 gallon or their 1 tank of fill-up and they're gone. And so we will capture those, but I don't think it's to the extent that everybody's thinking that it will be. The other part that somebody had mentioned is that this helps pay, it's a user fee. You know, all the vehicles and people that buy gas pay for the roads. Well, what about the electric vehicles? What about the other vehicles that are hybrid that are using less gallons but are still driving on our roads? You know, there are a lot of different factors when you look at this that you have to calculate into your equation. And what we would hope is that, and why we supported the Infrastructure Coalition's bill, was that it was a flat across the board tax. It keeps the playing field level, everybody's on an equal stance, and there's no anti-competitive segments that challenge the business. And that's why we would hope that you would not put it on the ballot because of those anti-competitive tendencies. I'm happy to answer questions or if anybody has any topics offline they would like to talk about, but we just think it's something that you should oppose, and I appreciate your time for letting me speak.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Whitman, and I'm running for legislature position in the Montana State. And I'm here to oppose the putting of the gas tax on the ballot. We're not opposed to the need for the roads to be repaired, but the way that you're going about it, we oppose. Most of my constituents have complained about having their taxes almost double, and that the county has not shown fiscal responsibility with those funds, and we really question what you're going to do with these funds if you will mismanage those as well. So at this point, my constituents and myself are opposing that tax. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Alan Alt. I'm a candidate for Missoula County Commissioners. I'm opposed to putting this on the ballot for several reasons. But to begin with, this whole measure, the way I see it, benefits the city of Missoula. I haven't heard much about Houston, Frenchtown, Condon, the outlying areas, other than the additional burden this will put on them. I really believe that you need to let the gas tax be, keep it at the statewide level and use funds from them. One of the things that I heard at this meeting from you guys is that we need to do better with what we have. And I really and truly believe that. People are fed up with taxes, and this is another tax. One of the things that I heard that really scares me is we need to, and it was from one of you, we need to find new revenue streams. You know what that is? Taxes. So I really think we need to do better with what we have. I would not like to see this on the ballot. Again, it's more for the benefit of the city. And if you convince the people of the city of Missoula to put this on the ballot and vote for it, I'm really afraid that it just might pass. And that, to me, that's not the best thing for the people. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this? All right, do we have any other business? All right, seeing none, we'll be adjourned. Thank you.